My name is Alexandra, and I'm 28 years old. 3 months before our wedding, my fiancé died in an accident. The last thing he created was my engagement ring, a stunning diamond piece worth $590,000. Last spring, I discovered it missing from my safe deposit box. My parents had taken it to fund my sister Brooke's healing journey in Bali. I didn't scream or shout. I simply disappeared. While I share how my life fell apart, let me know where you're watching from. Hit like and subscribe because the way I rebuilt everything will change how you think about family betrayal. Marcus and I met at a charity auction for the children's hospital where his younger brother had once been treated. I was coordinating the art donations, carefully arranging framed pieces against the venue's cream-colored walls. He approached me with curious eyes and a gentle smile, asking about a particular watercolor of the Italian countryside. "I've been to that exact spot in Florence," he said, pointing to the hills depicted in soft blues and greens. The artist captured the light perfectly. We talked for an hour about art, Italy, and art. Marcus was a jewelry designer with his own boutique studio downtown. His pieces were known for their unique, almost architectural quality, each one telling a story through intricate details and unexpected combinations of metals and stones. His hands were always slightly calloused, evidence of his dedication to physically crafting each design himself rather than merely drawing them for others to create. "Jewelry should feel like it belongs to the person wearing it," he often said. "Like it's always been a part of them." Our relationship bloomed quickly, deeply, as though we'd known each other in some previous life. Within 6 months, we had moved in together, merging our book collections and arguing playfully about whose coffee maker would claim counter space. His creative chaos complemented my curatorial precision. I helped organize his design sketches. He encouraged me to loosen my grip on perfect symmetry. When he proposed on our 1-year anniversary, it wasn't with a ring. Instead, he presented me with a beautifully bound sketchbook. "I want to design something unique for you," Marcus explained, opening to pages filled with preliminary drawings. "Something that tells our story. Will you collaborate with me on your engagement ring?" For the next 2 months, we spent evenings discussing designs over wine. I watched in awe as his pencil transformed our conversations into flowing lines on paper. The final design featured a central oval diamond surrounded by smaller stones arranged in a pattern reminiscent of the stars visible from the mountain cabin where we'd first said, "I love you." The band itself contained tiny engravings of places significant to our relationship, including the Florence hills from the painting where we'd first met. The completed ring exceeded even my wildest expectations. The main diamond caught light in ways that seemed almost magical, and the craftsmanship of the detailed band was extraordinary. Marcus had poured his entire soul into creating it, working nights and weekends until his fingers were raw. When he finally slipped it onto my finger, it felt exactly as he'd described ideal jewelry should feel, like it had always belonged there. "This ring represents not just my love for you," Marcus said, "but our creative partnership. It's us, Alexandra." We set the wedding date for the following spring. Everything was planned, from the venue overlooking the city to the playlist for our first dance. Marcus even designed our wedding bands to complement my engagement ring, creating a perfect trio. Then came the accident. A rainy night, a truck driver who fell asleep at the wheel, and suddenly Marcus was gone. I received the call at 2:17 in the morning, my phone's harsh ring slicing through the darkness of our bedroom. By the time I reached the hospital, he had already passed away. I never got to say goodbye. The weeks that followed passed in a blur of funeral arrangements, condolences, and paperwork. My parents came to stay with me, and my sister Brooke flew in from Chicago. They helped me navigate the overwhelming logistics of death, shielding me from the endless decisions when I could barely function. "We're here for you, sweetheart," my mother Susan would say, stroking my hair as though I were still a child. "Whatever you need." My father Richard, always the practical one, handled the insurance companies and legal matters. "Don't worry about any of this," he assured me. Just focus on taking care of yourself. Brooke stayed the longest, sleeping on my couch for nearly a month. My relationship with my sister had always been complex. Growing up, she'd struggled with anxiety and depression, conditions that often drew our parents' attention and concern. I'd learned early to be the easy child, the one who caused no trouble and required minimal support. Still, in those dark days after losing Marcus, Brooke showed up for me in ways I hadn't expected. "It's my turn to be the strong one," she said. When my family finally returned to their own lives, I was left alone in an apartment filled with memories. I couldn't bear to wear the engagement ring, but I couldn't part with it either. It was the last thing Marcus had created, the physical embodiment of our love and his artistic legacy. After much consideration, I placed it in a safe deposit box at my bank. "I'll wear it again someday," I promised myself. Perhaps as a necklace on what would have been our anniversary. Gradually, I returned to work at the art gallery. Immersing myself in the familiar routine of exhibitions and acquisitions provided some relief from grief. My boss, Catherine, was incredibly understanding, allowing me flexibility when waves of sadness made it difficult to function. "Art heals," she reminded me, "and you belong here with us." I developed a ritual of visiting the safe deposit box monthly, opening the ring's velvet case and allowing myself to remember. With each visit, the pain became slightly more manageable, transforming slowly from a sharp, breathtaking agony to a persistent ache I could carry more steadily. Throughout this time, I maintained regular contact with my family. Sunday phone calls with my parents. Occasional text exchanges with Brooke, who seemed to be going through a rough patch again. I noticed she'd been taking more time off work, mentioning vague health concerns that never seemed to have specific diagnoses. "I just need to focus on healing," she would say whenever I asked for details. "My therapist thinks I'm carrying too much stress in my body." I sympathized. After all, who was I to question another person's pain when mine was so consuming? I encouraged her self-care efforts, never suspecting how our different approaches to healing would eventually collide in the most devastating way. As the first anniversary of Marcus's death approached, I began planning a small memorial. Something intimate and meaningful to honor his memory. Part of this plan involved retrieving the ring, which I intended to wear on a chain close to my heart during the ceremony. Little did I know that this simple act would unravel the remaining threads holding my life together. The morning I discovered the betrayal began ordinarily enough. I woke early, made coffee, and prepared for my visit to the bank. It was a Tuesday in April, almost exactly a year since the accident. Spring sunshine filtered through my kitchen windows as I dressed carefully in a blue dress Marcus had always loved, applying minimal makeup to conceal the evidence of another restless night. The bank opened at 9. I arrived at 9:15, greeting the security guard with a smile that felt foreign on my face. The process of accessing my safe deposit box was familiar by now, a routine I'd performed monthly for the past year. The manager escorted me to the vault, unlocked the outer door with her key while I used mine, and then left me alone with the metal box. When I opened it, my heart stuttered. The velvet case was missing. At first, I thought I must be mistaken. Perhaps I'd moved it within the box? I emptied the few other contents, birth certificate, passport, some family heirlooms, spreading them across the small private table. No ring case. I checked again, fingers trembling as they explored the empty corners of the box. "There must be some mistake," I told the manager when I summoned her back. "My engagement ring is missing." She frowned, checking her records. "There's no record of anyone else accessing this box, Ms. Hamilton," she said. "Except," she paused, tapping at her computer. "Your parents used their emergency access authorization 3 weeks ago." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. Yes, I had authorized my parents as emergency contacts when I first rented the box in the foggy aftermath of Marcus's death. But there had been no emergency. "I need to make a call," I managed to say, stepping into the hallway with my phone in hand. My father answered on the 4th ring. "Alexandra?" Is everything all right? Dad, did you and Mom access my safe deposit box recently? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. A long pause, followed by muffled voices. My mother in the background, though I couldn't make out her words. We should discuss this in person, he finally said. Why don't you come over for dinner tonight? I'll be there in 30 minutes, I replied, ending the call before he could respond. The drive to my parents' suburban home felt surreal. Trees and buildings blurred past as questions circled in my mind. Why would they take the ring? What emergency could possibly justify this? And why hadn't they told me? Their house looked the same as always, the familiar colonial with navy shutters and my mother's carefully tended flower beds. Dad opened the door before I could knock, his expression guarded. Where's Mom? I asked, stepping inside. In the kitchen, he replied, leading the way. My mother stood by the counter, nervously wiping already clean surfaces. She looked up when I entered, her smile too bright. Alexandra, sweetie, we weren't expecting you until dinner. Where's my ring? I asked directly, seeing no point in circling the issue. They exchanged glances. Sit down, please, my father said, gesturing to the kitchen table. I remained standing. Just tell me where it is. My mother sighed, setting down her dishcloth. We were going to tell you. We just wanted to find the right time. The right time for what? My voice had taken on a dangerous edge. Brooke needed help, my father explained, as though this statement answered everything. She found this wellness retreat in Bali. Very exclusive, very effective for people with her sensitivities. What does that have to do with my engagement ring? Another loaded glance between them. My mother finally spoke. The program was expensive, Alexandra. Very expensive. Our savings wouldn't cover it, and Brooke's insurance considered it experimental. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. You sold my ring to pay for Brooke's retreat? It was just sitting in that box, my mother said quickly. And Brooke needed immediate intervention. Her therapist said she was at a critical juncture. You had no right, I whispered, the room beginning to spin slightly. That ring was the last thing Marcus ever made. It was mine. Sweetheart, we know it meant something to you, my father said. But Brooke's health had to take priority. You've always been the strong one. Where is she now? I asked. In Bali. The program lasts 6 weeks. My mother's voice carried a note of pride. It's very exclusive. Only 10 participants at a time, with personal wellness coaches and daily therapy. I pulled out my phone, searching for information about luxury retreats in Bali. The results showed serene infinity pools overlooking rice terraces, private villas with outdoor showers, spa treatments, and yoga platforms facing the ocean. How much did it cost? I asked. My father cleared his throat. The program itself was $400,000. Then there were the flights, private accommodations, extra treatments. So you sold my $590,000 ring, designed by my dead fiancé, without even asking me? The calm in my voice surprised even me. Alexandra, my mother said softly, you need to move forward. It's been a year. Marcus would want you to let go. Keeping that ring in a box was dwelling in the past. Something cold settled in my chest at her words. And Brooke's mental health issues? Are those not dwelling in the past? She's been in therapy since high school. That's different, my father said firmly. Brooke is fragile. She always has been. You've always been our rock. I looked at these people, my parents. Did you even consider asking me? I finally said. Would you have agreed? My father countered. Of course not. But that was my decision to make. We had to act quickly, my mother insisted. The retreat only had one opening. It was an opportunity Brooke couldn't miss. I noticed something then, a slight relaxation in their postures. They had expected screaming, tears, a breakdown. My eerie calm was reassuring them that this might blow over, that reliable Alexandra would ultimately understand. They were wrong. I need to go, I said quietly. Stay for dinner, my mother urged. I made your favorite pasta. We can talk more about this. No, I replied, already moving toward the door. I need time to process this. Alexandra, my father called after me. Try to understand. Family comes first. I paused at the doorway, looking back at them. Yes, I agreed. Family should come first. Then I walked out, closing the door gently behind me, the soft click far less satisfying than the slam they deserved. The drive back to my apartment passed in a blur. Traffic lights, other cars, pedestrians, all seemed like distant elements in someone else's reality. I parked in my usual spot but remained seated, hands gripping the steering wheel as though it might anchor me to sanity. Inside my apartment, silence greeted me, the familiar space suddenly feeling foreign. I moved from room to room, touching objects Marcus and I had chosen together, small artifacts of our shared life. A blue ceramic vase he'd bought from a street artist. The oversized reading chair we'd squeezed through the doorway with much laughter and cursing. The framed sketch of my engagement ring, his original concept drawing before he'd refined it into the final design. That sketch undid me. I sank to the floor beneath it, my back against the wall, and finally allowed the tears to come. Not just for the ring, but for the profound betrayal by the people I had trusted most. The people who should have protected what remained of my broken heart. Between sobs, I tried calling Brooke. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Brooke, it's me. Call me back immediately. I know about the ring. When crying exhausted itself, I opened my laptop and searched for her on social media. Brooke had always been active online, documenting everything from coffee shop visits to new shoes. Sure enough, her Instagram showed recent activity. I scrolled through dozens of photos posted over the past 3 weeks. Brooke lounging by an infinity pool, cocktail in hand. Brooke shopping in what appeared to be high-end boutiques. Brooke at a beachside club, surrounded by newfound friends. Brooke displaying multiple shopping bags with designer logos. Not a single image showed anything resembling therapy or healing work. No yoga mats, meditation sessions, or therapy groups. Instead, it looked like an extended luxury vacation, funded by the most precious thing I owned. As I stared at the images, my phone buzzed with a text from her. Just saw your voicemail. What's up? I called immediately. She answered with ambient music and laughter in the background. Alexandra. Hold on, let me find somewhere quieter. A few moments of rustling, then okay, I can hear now. What's going on? Did you know? I asked without preamble. Know what? Her voice carried that slightly defensive tone I recognized from childhood when she'd been caught taking something of mine. About my engagement ring. That mom and dad sold it to pay for your retreat. A pause. Oh, that. Yes, that. My $590,000 ring that Marcus designed before he died. That you're apparently using to fund pool parties and shopping sprees. It's not like that, she protested. This is a legitimate wellness program. The social activities are part of the healing process. Brooke, I can see your posts. You're at a resort, not a therapy center. Another pause. Look, I did need this. My anxiety was getting unbearable. And it's not like you were using the ring. It was just sitting in a bank. Her words, so similar to our mother. I know you're upset, she said, her voice softening into the placating tone she'd always used to diffuse situations. But try to see the bigger picture. That ring was just bringing you pain, keeping you tied to grief. This way, it's helping someone heal. Did you even think about asking me first? A longer silence. Mom and Dad said it would be better to ask forgiveness than permission. Of course they did. It had always been their approach with Brooke's needs, immediate action without consideration for collateral damage. Enjoy Bali, I said flatly. Don't contact me again. I ended the call as she began to protest, then blocked her number and social media accounts. Sitting in the sudden silence of my apartment, I felt something shift inside me. The initial shock and pain were transforming into something else, something colder and more determined. I slept surprisingly well that night, as though my brain had simply shut down to process the magnitude of the betrayal. When I woke, The strange calm from the previous day remained, but now it had purpose. I called in sick to work, then spent the morning researching. First, I looked into legal options. The ring had been a gift, clearly intended for me. According to several legal websites, engagement rings were considered conditional gifts until marriage, but since Marcus had died rather than our relationship ending, the ring was unquestionably mine. My parents had technically committed theft. I scheduled a consultation with an attorney named Jordan Peterson, who specialized in family law and property disputes. In his downtown office, surrounded by law books and framed credentials, I explained the situation. Legally, you have a solid case, Jordan confirmed after hearing me out. The ring was your property. Your parents' emergency access to your safe deposit box doesn't grant them ownership rights to its contents. What would pursuing this entail? I asked. We'd file charges for theft and conversion of property. Given the value, it would be a felony. We'd also pursue civil damages for the full value plus emotional distress. The thought of my parents facing criminal charges created a momentary pang of doubt. Despite everything, they were still my parents. Is there another option? I asked. Jordan leaned back in his chair. You could demand restitution privately. I thanked him for his time, paying his consultation fee but not retaining his services yet. Legal action remained an option, but something told me there might be a more effective path to justice, one that would force genuine reflection rather than defensive legal maneuvering. Back home, I began formulating a different kind of plan. If my family considered me merely the strong one, useful primarily as a contrast to Brooke's fragility, perhaps it was time to remove myself from the equation entirely. Let them experience life without their reliable rock. Over the next week, I methodically laid groundwork. I contacted my investment advisor and liquidated my personal portfolio, transferring the funds to a new account at a different bank. I researched international living options, focusing on Florence, the city Marcus and I had dreamed of visiting together. I researched long-term visa requirements for Italy, housing options, and potential employment opportunities for someone with my art background. I also visited my boss, Catherine, requesting an extended personal leave. 6 months, I said. Possibly longer. Catherine studied me with concern. This isn't like you, Alexandra. What's going on? I shared a simplified version of recent events. Her expression shifted from concern to outrage. Take whatever time you need, she said firmly. Your position will be here when you're ready to return. Just stay in touch. I will, I promised, though I already knew contact would be minimal. Next, I contacted a real estate agent and quietly listed my apartment for sale. The market was strong, and she assured me we could complete a sale within 30 days. I began sorting my possessions, deciding what to store, what to sell, and what few precious items would travel with me. Throughout these preparations, my parents called daily. I let most go to voicemail, but answered occasionally to prevent them from becoming suspicious. Our conversations were superficial, neither of us mentioning the ring. They seemed to believe the crisis had passed, that I had accepted their decision, as I had accepted so many other inequities throughout my life. We should have dinner this weekend, my mother suggested during one call. The three of us. It feels like forever since we've had a family meal. Maybe next week, I replied vaguely. Work is hectic right now. You work too hard, sweetheart. Take care of yourself. The irony of her concern was not lost on me. As my plan took shape, I experienced moments of doubt. Was I overreacting? Would this cause more pain than it was worth? But then I would remember my mother's dismissal of my grief as dwelling in the past, or Brooke's casual assumption that my most precious possession was hers to benefit from. The resolve would harden again, like molten metal cooling into an unbreakable form. 1 month after discovering the theft, my apartment sold for above asking price. I arranged for my furniture and most possessions to go into storage, keeping only 2 suitcases of clothing and personal items. I purchased a one-way ticket to Florence, scheduled for the following week. The night before, I'm doing the right thing, I whispered to the empty room, whether seeking confirmation from Marcus's memory or reassuring myself. I wasn't entirely sure. Either way, the decision was made. By this time tomorrow, Alexandra Hamilton would disappear from her family's life, leaving them to confront the void her absence would create. The morning of my departure brought unexpected rain, droplets streaking down my taxi window like tears I refused to shed. I'd chosen an early flight, the gray dawn matching my somber mood as we navigated toward the airport. My final acts before leaving the apartment had been methodical, deliberate, a sequence of bridges burning behind me. I'd left my cell phone on the kitchen counter, removing the SIM card and breaking it in half. The phone contained too many traceable connections to my past, too many ways for my family to locate or contact me. Instead, I'd purchased a new phone with a European plan, with contact information known only to Catherine from the gallery and my attorney. My email accounts had been similarly abandoned, replaced by new ones under variations of my middle name. I'd withdrawn from social media entirely, deleting accounts rather than merely deactivating them. The digital severance felt strangely liberating, like shedding an electronic skin that had become too constrictive. At the airport, I checked my 2 suitcases and clutched my carry-on containing essentials, including Marcus's ring sketch secured in a protective sleeve. The international terminal buzzed with early morning travelers, families embracing in tearful goodbyes, business people striding purposefully toward their gates. I moved among them like a ghost, untethered from the connections that anchored others. The flight to Florence included a connection in London. 12 hours of enforced stillness, watching movies without absorbing their plots, picking at airplane food without tasting it. Somewhere over the Atlantic, I allowed myself to acknowledge the magnitude of what I was doing. Not just traveling, but deliberately disappearing. Creating an absence that would force my family to confront the consequences of their actions. By the time I'd landed in Florence, navigated customs, and found a taxi to the small apartment I'd rented online, exhaustion had settled deep into my bones. Still, I paused on the narrow street outside my new building, taking in the warm terracotta walls, the shuttered windows, the distant view of the Duomo rising above neighboring rooftops. Florence, the city Marcus and I had planned to visit on our honeymoon. My temporary home was a third-floor walk-up in the Oltrarno district, across the Arno River from the main tourist areas. The apartment was small but charming, with high ceilings, tile floors, and a tiny balcony just large enough for a single chair. The landlady, Signora Ricci, a widowed professor of literature, handed me the keys with a warm smile and broken English. "You rest now," she instructed. "Tomorrow I show you neighborhood." That first night in Florence, I slept deeply for the first time in weeks, perhaps aided by jet lag or perhaps by the knowledge that an ocean now separated me from my previous life. When I woke, sunlight was streaming through shutters I'd forgotten to close, illuminating dust motes dancing in golden beams. For a moment, disoriented by unfamiliar surroundings, I felt a surge of panic. Then remembrance settled in, along with the quiet certainty that I had made the right choice. True to her word, Signora Ricci appeared at my door that afternoon, insisting on showing me essential locations, the best cafes, markets, and which bakery made superior bread. Her kindness, expected nothing in return, formed a stark contrast to the conditional love I'd left behind. Meanwhile, back in America, my disappearance was beginning to register. My parents, initially annoyed by my unresponsiveness, grew concerned enough by the third day to drive to my apartment. Finding it empty and for sale, their concern transformed to panic. They contacted my workplace, where Catherine, honoring my wishes, confirmed only that I had taken extended leave for personal reasons. My friends, those few who weren't connected to my family, had been told I needed time away but not my destination. I learned about their mounting worry through carefully monitored emails to my abandoned accounts, which I checked via a secure browser once weekly. Their messages evolved from confused to frantic, finally culminating in a formal missing persons report filed with local police. The report was eventually dismissed, as the detective assigned to the case quickly determined I had left voluntarily, sold my property legally, and simply chosen not to disclose my whereabouts to family. This knowledge should have brought satisfaction, vindication even. Instead, it created a complicated tangle of emotions, guilt interwoven with justified anger, loneliness threading through newfound independence. I resisted the urge to contact them, to ease their worry. The lesson would be meaningless if shortened by compassion. In Florence, I established new routines. Morning coffee at a corner cafe where the barista soon recognized me, greeting me by name. Italian language classes 3 times weekly, gradually building my ability to navigate daily life. Long walks exploring the city, following paths Marcus and I had traced on maps during our honeymoon planning. 2 months into my self-imposed exile, I found work at a small gallery specializing in contemporary Italian artists. The owner, Lucia Bianchi, a formidable woman in her 50s with silver-streaked black hair and an encyclopedic knowledge of art history, hired me despite my limited Italian. My background in American galleries and genuine appreciation for her artists' work had impressed her. "You have good eyes," she declared after our interview. "You see beyond technique to intention." Working at Galleria Bianchi provided not just income but purpose. I assisted with exhibitions, translated materials for English-speaking clients, and gradually began contributing to acquisition decisions. Lucia became both mentor and friend, sharing meals at her family home where her husband Giovanni cooked elaborate dinners and their adult children argued passionately about politics and art. "You are too thin," Giovanni would declare, serving me second helpings. "Art needs fuel." Their warmth created cracks in the protective shell I'd built around myself. I began to experience moments of genuine joy again, small bursts of light penetrating the darkness that had enveloped me since Marcus's death, intensified by my family's betrayal. One evening, after a successful exhibition opening, Lucia sat with me in the empty gallery, sharing a bottle of wine. "You carry great sadness," she observed. "Not just grief, but something deeper." Perhaps it was the wine or the growing trust between us, but I found myself sharing the full story: Marcus's death, the ring he'd created, my parents' betrayal, my sister's selfishness, my decision to disappear. Lucia listened without interruption, her expressive face registering appropriate shock and outrage. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You did right to leave," she said firmly. "Some lessons can only be taught through absence." Her validation soothed a lingering doubt I'd carried across the ocean. As months passed, Florence transformed from escape to home. I found community among fellow expatriates and local artists. My Italian improved from halting phrases to conversational fluency. I moved from my temporary apartment to a slightly larger one with a studio space where I began experimenting with jewelry design, inspired by Marcus's techniques, but developing my own aesthetic. The first Christmas away from family proved challenging. Holiday decorations appeared throughout the city, families gathered, traditions unfolded around me while I remained separate. Lucia and Giovanni insisted I join their family celebration, setting a place for me at their crowded table among children, grandchildren, and various relatives. Their kindness intensified both gratitude and grief. That night, alone in my apartment with the remnants of panettone and too much wine, I allowed myself to cry for all that had been lost. Not just Marcus, but the family I had believed in, the parents I had trusted, the sister whose struggles I had always tried to accommodate. The tears felt cleansing, necessary, like lancing a wound to release infection. In the morning, I woke to Florence's winter sunshine and the distant sound of church bells. 6 months had passed since my departure. Half a year of silence, of rebuilding, of transformation. I wondered what changes my absence had created in those I'd left behind. January brought news from home, delivered indirectly through mutual connections I still maintained. Brooke had returned from her extended Bali healing journey to find me gone, the family in disarray. According to my former colleague Jennifer, who remained friends with Brooke's roommate, my disappearance had triggered a family crisis unlike anything they'd experienced before. "Your parents are beside themselves," Jennifer texted to my new number, which I'd shared with only her and Catherine. "And Brooke is apparently falling apart. She's telling everyone it's her fault you left." I absorbed this information with complicated emotions. Part of me, a small, wounded part one wasn't proud of, felt vindicated. They were finally experiencing consequences for their actions, feeling the weight of my absence after taking me for granted for so long. Yet another part ached at the thought of their pain, especially my mother's. Despite everything, I couldn't fully disconnect from the love I still felt for them. "Are they okay?" I asked Jennifer during our next video call, attempting casualness. Jennifer gave me a knowing look. "They're alive and healthy, if that's what you're asking. But no, they're not okay. Your dad looks like he's aged 10 years. Your mom has apparently thrown herself into searching for you, hiring private investigators who keep hitting dead ends. And Brooke? That's the interesting part," Jennifer said, leaning closer to her camera. "Your parents are actually holding her responsible. According to Stacy, her roommate, there's been a major shift in family dynamics. They're demanding she pay them back for the Bali trip." This detail surprised me. Not well. Her social media went from party pics to victim posts almost overnight. Lots of cryptic messages about being blamed for things beyond her control. But Stacy says something else is happening behind the scenes. Apparently, Brooke had been lying about therapy for years. "What do you mean?" "The money your parents had been giving her for weekly sessions? She was spending it on shopping and weekends away. The Bali trip wasn't her first vacation funded by family money, just the biggest one." This revelation landed like my monitoring of abandoned email accounts confirmed Jennifer's report. Messages from my parents had evolved from panic to a deeper, more reflective tone. "We've realized some hard truths about our family," my father wrote in one email. "About how we've treated both our daughters. Please contact us, Alexandra. We need to talk." My mother's messages were more emotional. "I wake up every day hoping today will be the day you reach out. I never understood how much we depended on you until you were gone. Please come home, sweetheart. Whatever it takes to make this right." Brooke's emails shifted dramatically over time. Initial messages blamed me for overreacting. It was just a ring, not worth destroying the family over. Then transitioned to self-pity. "Everyone's blaming me now," before finally arriving at what seemed like genuine remorse. "I've started actual therapy," she wrote 6 months after my disappearance. Real therapy this time, not the fake sessions I claimed to attend. "The therapist says I need to take responsibility for my actions and the harm I've caused. I know saying sorry isn't enough, but I am truly sorry, Alexandra. Not just for the ring, but for years of selfishness." I might have dismissed this as another manipulation except for a separate email from my cousin Rachel, who had apparently guessed my new email address based on patterns in usernames I'd used since childhood. "I don't know if this will reach you," Rachel wrote, "but I thought you should know Brooke is finally getting help. Real help. She's been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and is in an intensive treatment program. Your parents are in family therapy too. You're leaving shattered something in the family system, Alexandra. It's painful to watch, but maybe necessary." Rachel included details only she would know, confirming the email's authenticity. She described family gatherings where my absence was a palpable presence, holidays that felt incomplete, my parents aging visibly under the strain of uncertainty. "They know they failed you," Rachel wrote. "Whatever you decide, whether to reconnect or maintain distance, I support you. You deserved better than what they did." Her message brought tears I thought I'd exhausted months ago. Rachel and I had been close as children but drifted apart in adulthood. Her understanding meant more than I could have anticipated. As spring bloomed in Florence, bringing tourists flooding back to the city, I found myself increasingly preoccupied with thoughts of home. Not homesickness exactly, but a growing awareness that my disappearance, initially planned as punishment, had evolved into something else. A genuine rebuilding of myself separate from family expectations and dynamics. My work at the gallery had expanded. Lucia now trusted me to represent Galleria Bianchi at art fairs across Europe. My own jewelry designs had progressed from hobby to serious creative pursuit, with several pieces sold through the gallery's gift shop. I developed friendships, favorite restaurants, preferred walking routes through the city. Florence had become home in ways I hadn't anticipated. One evening, experimenting with a new silver technique in my small studio space, I realized I was happy. Not the uncomplicated happiness I'd known with Marcus, but a hard-won contentment built from the ashes of multiple losses. I was creating a life that honored him while allowing growth beyond grief. This realization brought an unexpected thought. Perhaps it was time to reconnect with my family, not to return to old patterns, but to establish new terms for our relationship. The thought terrified me. Opening that door meant risking fresh pain, exposing myself to the possibility of renewed betrayal. Yet continuing in silence also carried costs, perpetuating suffering that might have served its purpose. That night, I sat on my tiny balcony overlooking the Florentine rooftops, Marcus's ring sketch in my lap. The paper had yellowed slightly at the edges, but his precise lines remained clear, the design that had become both loss and catalyst. "What would you advise?" I whispered, as though he might. The decision, I realized, was entirely mine to make. Not as the Alexandra who had left America a year ago, wounded and seeking revenge, but as the woman I had become in the intervening months. Someone stronger, more defined in her boundaries, more certain of her worth. I opened my laptop and began composing emails, choosing my words with careful precision. It was time to end one chapter and determine whether another might be possible. Exactly 1 year after my disappearance, I initiated contact. The timing was deliberate, a full-circle moment allowing for reflection on all that had changed in 12 months of separation. I sent identical messages to my parents and Brooke, brief and direct. "I am ready to talk." Their responses came quickly, my mother's within minutes, frantic with relief and questions. My father's more measured, but equally emotional. Brooke's response came last, tentative and subdued. All agreed to the call. The days leading up to Sunday brought increasing anxiety. I prepared my apartment, arranging my laptop so the background revealed little of my location, just a neutral wall with a single landscape painting. I wrote speaking points, determined to maintain control of the conversation rather than being overwhelmed by their reactions. When Sunday arrived, I dressed carefully in a blue blouse that Marcus had given me, a subtle armor against vulnerability. I made tea, positioning the cup outside the camera frame. At precisely 3 p.m. their time, 9 p.m. in Florence, I initiated the call. Their faces appeared on screen, gathered in my parents' living room. The sight of them after so long created a physical reaction, a tightness in my chest that made breathing difficult. They had indeed aged, my father's hair noticeably grayer, my mother thinner than I remembered. Brooke sat slightly apart, her usual carefully styled appearance replaced by simpler, more natural look. For a moment, no one spoke. We simply stared at each other across digital space and the thousands of miles between us. "Alexandra," my mother finally breathed, her voice breaking. "Is it really you? Are you all right? Where are you?" "I'm fine," I replied, my prepared composure already threatening to crack. "I'm safe and well." "We've been out of our minds with worry." "Yes," I acknowledged. "I did." "Why?" my mother asked. "We know you were upset about the ring, but to vanish completely, to put us through this terror." I took a deep breath, centering myself. "That's exactly why we need this conversation. You still don't understand what happened, what you did." We made a mistake, my father conceded. We should have discussed the ring with you first. But to punish us like this, for a year, was extreme. This wasn't about punishment, I said. At least, not entirely. It was about creating the space I needed to rebuild my life without the family dynamics that have shaped all our relationships. What dynamics? My mother asked, genuinely confused. The ones where Brooke's needs always came first. Where I was expected to be the strong one, the reasonable one, the one who would understand and forgive. Where my grief over losing Marcus was considered dwelling in the past, while Brooke's lifelong issues were treated as emergencies requiring immediate attention. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. Brooke stared at her hands. We never meant to make you feel less important, my mother said. Intention doesn't change impact, I replied, using a phrase my own therapist in Florence had often repeated. The ring wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was the last thing Marcus created, a physical manifestation of our love and his talent. Taking it without my permission wasn't a minor oversight. It was a profound betrayal that revealed how little you valued what mattered to me. My father shifted uncomfortably. We've had a lot of time to think about this, Alexandra. You're right. We failed you terribly. We've been in family therapy, trying to understand how we created such destructive patterns. This admission, so different from the defensiveness I'd anticipated, momentarily threw me off balance. And I've been in individual therapy too. Brooke spoke for the first time, her voice quiet. Real therapy this time. I've been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. It helps explain some of my behavior, but it doesn't excuse it. She looked directly into the camera. I was jealous of your relationship with Marcus. Of the way he looked at you, the beautiful life you were building. When he died, part of me was secretly relieved that you wouldn't get the perfect ending I thought you didn't deserve. Her brutal honesty stunned me into silence. When Mom and Dad mentioned selling your ring for my treatment, I should have said no. Instead, I encouraged it. I knew what that ring meant to you, and I wanted it gone because it represented everything I thought I could never have. Tears streamed down her face. The retreat in Bali was a joke. I spent most of the time partying and shopping, not healing. It wasn't until you disappeared that I realized what I'd done, the part I'd played in driving you away. My parents looked pained by her confession, but didn't interrupt. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Brooke continued. I just want you to know that I understand now how much I've hurt you, not just with the ring but for years. I'm working to change, to take responsibility for my actions instead of playing the victim. The script I'd prepared for this conversation suddenly seemed inadequate. I had expected defensiveness, perhaps eventual contrition, but not this immediate ownership of harm. Thank you for your honesty, I managed. My mother wiped tears from her cheeks. Alexandra, please tell us where you are. Let us come to you. Make this right somehow. I shook my head. I'm not ready for that. I've built a new life here, one that I value. I'm not coming back, at least not to live. Are you in Europe? My father asked. Your credit cards showed purchases in London before they went inactive. My location isn't important right now, I said. What matters is whether we can establish new terms for our relationship, ones based on mutual respect rather than established roles. Anything, my mother said quickly. We just want you back in our lives. That's not how this works, I replied gently. This isn't a negotiation where you make concessions to get what you want. It's about fundamental change and how we relate to each other. Tell us what you need from us, my father said. I considered the question carefully. I need acknowledgement of the harm done, which you've begun today. I need space to continue building my independent life. I need assurance that old patterns won't resume at the first opportunity. And the ring? My mother asked hesitantly. The ring is gone, I said, surprising. This revelation clearly surprised them. You're making jewelry now? Brooke asked. Among other things. I work at an art gallery. I'm learning Italian. I'm building connections with people who value me for myself, not for the role I play in family dynamics. We'd like to support your new work, my father said. Financially, if you'd allow it. Perhaps as some small restitution. I shook my head. I don't want your money. What I want is for us to develop a healthier relationship, if that's possible. One where all of us are seen as full people with equal value and needs. We want that too, my mother said. More than anything. Brooke looked up. Alexandra, would you be willing to have individual conversations with each of us? I understand if you don't want to talk to me, but I'd like the chance to continue this dialogue. Her request, humble and without expectation, touched something in me. I think that would be a good next step. Not immediately, but soon. The conversation continued for another hour, painful at times, but surprisingly productive. We established preliminary boundaries, agreeing to email contact first, then regular video calls if those went well. I maintained my privacy regarding my exact location, but shared some details about my new life, enough to reassure them without compromising my independence. When we finally said goodbye, the faces on my screen looked both drained and somehow lighter, as though a burden had been set down, not removed entirely but adjusted to allow movement forward. After closing my laptop, I stepped onto my balcony, breathing in the night air of Florence. The conversation had gone nothing like I'd anticipated, neither the triumphant confrontation I'd once imagined nor the tearful reunion my mother clearly hoped for. Instead, it felt like the first careful step onto a bridge still under construction, its final form yet to be determined. Whether that bridge would ultimately connect us remained to be seen. But for the first time since discovering the ring's theft, I felt genuine hope that healing might be possible, not just for me alone in Florence, but perhaps eventually for our family as well. 2 years after walking away from everything I knew, Florence no longer felt like an escape, but a deliberate choice. My apartment had evolved from temporary refuge to true home, walls adorned with local art, shelves filled with books in both English and increasingly competent Italian. The small second bedroom had transformed into a proper jewelry studio, equipped with tools acquired piece by piece as my skills and client base grew. My collection, Renascita, or Rebirth in English, had gained modest recognition in local artistic circles. Inspired by Florentine architecture and Marcus's techniques, but distinctly my own vision, the pieces featured unexpected combinations of materials, fragments coming together to create something new and whole. Lucia displayed them prominently in Galleria Bianchi, where they attracted both tourists and discerning local collectors. "You have found your voice," Lucia told me after a particularly successful exhibition. Not just in jewelry, but in life. She was right. The Alexandra who had fled America in pain and anger had gradually transformed, like metal under careful hands. The grief remained, a permanent part of my composition, but no longer defined me completely. I had built something new around it, incorporating loss into a larger, richer identity. My relationship with my family had undergone its own careful reconstruction. Weekly emails had progressed to monthly video calls, each interaction establishing firmer foundations for healthier connections. My parents had continued therapy, working to understand the patterns that had contributed to our family breakdown. They respected my boundaries with occasional lapses that were now addressed directly rather than silently accommodated. Brooke's transformation proved most surprising. Her diagnosis, while difficult to accept initially, had provided framework for understanding behaviors that had damaged our relationship for years. Her therapy was intensive and ongoing, focusing on emotional regulation and interpersonal skills. Our relationship, once characterized by her needs overshadowing mine, had begun to develop greater balance. 6 months after our first video call, she had asked if she could visit Florence. I hesitated, unsure if I was ready for such direct contact, but eventually agreed to a short visit. Her arrival at Florence Airport, without our parents, marked a significant step for both of us. "This city suits you," she observed as we walked along the Arno that first evening. "I see why you stayed." During her week-long visit, we navigated new terrain together, acknowledging painful history while cautiously building fresh connections. She apologized again for her role in taking the ring, this time in person, where I could see the genuine remorse in her eyes. "I was so wrapped up in my own pain that I couldn't see yours," she admitted. "Or rather, I saw it but thought mine should take precedence." "We were both in pain," I acknowledged. The difference was how our parents responded to it. Before leaving, Brooke presented me with a small package. Inside was a velvet jewelry case containing a single diamond, smaller than the center stone of my engagement ring, but of excellent quality. "It's not the same, I know," she said tentatively. The gesture, imperfect but sincere, moved me deeply. That diamond eventually became the centerpiece of a pendant I designed specifically to represent transformation, set in an intricate silver framework that allowed light to enter from multiple angles. My parents made their own gestures toward reconciliation. They offered financial support for my jewelry business, which I declined, preferring to build it through my own efforts. Instead, they helped by connecting me with their extensive social network, many of whom became clients or recommended my work to others. My father, always practical, assisted with establishing proper business structures for international sales. My mother maintained a digital album of my creations, proudly sharing it with friends. When they finally visited Florence, 18 months after our first video call, the reunion was tentative but ultimately healing. They stayed in a nearby hotel rather than my apartment, respecting my space while allowing proximity for daily interaction. I showed them my adopted city through new eyes, sharing favorite cafes, hidden gardens, and the studio space where I created. "You've built a beautiful life," my mother said, standing in my workshop surrounded by designs in various stages of completion. "We're so proud of you. Not because of what you've accomplished, though that's remarkable, but because of who you've become despite what happened." "Not despite," I corrected gently. "Partly because of it." The pain was real, but so was the growth that followed. On their final evening in Florence, as we shared dinner on the rooftop restaurant of their hotel, my father raised an unexpected subject. "We've been thinking about the ring," he said carefully. "Not to reopen old wounds, but to acknowledge properly what was lost." My mother reached for his hand. "We've set aside the full value of the ring, $590,000. We'd like to establish a scholarship in Marcus's name at the design school he attended, for students specializing in jewelry design." The thoughtfulness of this gesture, honoring Marcus's talent and legacy rather than simply attempting to compensate me financially, brought unexpected tears. "He would have loved that," I said truthfully. Helping new artists develop their vision was important to him. As my family relationships gradually healed, my personal life expanded in other directions as well. Through a gallery event, I met Gabriel, an Italian architect whose appreciation for design complemented my artistic sensibilities. Our relationship developed slowly, both of us carrying past experiences that made caution necessary. "I'm not trying to replace what you lost," he told me 6 months into our relationship. "Just hoping to create something new alongside it." His understanding that my love for Marcus would always remain part of me, not competition but companion to any new connection, allowed trust to develop between us. By the second anniversary of my arrival in Florence, Gabriel had become an important presence in my life. His apartment across the city gradually accumulating my books and jewelry tools as my place collected his architectural models and drafting supplies. One spring morning, sitting at my workbench with sunlight streaming through the windows, I completed a special project I'd been working on for months. Using the small diamond Brooke had given me, along with tiny stones I discovered among Marcus's personal effects shipped from storage, I created a ring for myself. Not a replacement for the engagement ring, but a new creation that honored the past while embracing the present. The design featured elements inspired by Florence's architecture and Marcus's techniques, but executed in my own distinctive style. When completed, it fit my finger perfectly, catching light in ways that created constant movement and change depending on the angle of view. That evening, I stood on Ponte Vecchio, the ancient bridge lined with jewelry shops where Marcus and I had planned to visit on our honeymoon. Gabriel had joined me for a sunset walk, his hand warm in mine as we paused to watch the Arno turn golden in fading light. "Is that new?" he asked, noticing the ring on my right hand. "Just finished it today," I replied, extending my hand so the stones caught the sunset glow. "It's something I needed to make for myself." He studied it with appreciation, understanding both its artistic merit and deeper significance without needing explanation. "It's beautiful, like a story captured in metal and stone." "That's exactly what it is," I agreed. "A story about loss and rebuilding, about how sometimes the things we think will destroy us actually force us to discover strengths we never knew we had." As we continued our walk, I reflected on the journey of the past 3 years. The devastating loss of Marcus, the profound betrayal by my family, the frightening leap into unknown territory. Each painful step had somehow led here, to this moment of peace and possibility I couldn't have imagined during those dark days. The original ring was gone forever, its physical form transformed into experiences and opportunities for my sister, ultimately catalyzing changes for our entire family. Yet something of its essence remained, translated through my hands into new creations, its memory honored not through preservation, but through growth and transformation. Standing in the city Marcus and I had dreamed of visiting together, I finally understood that while objects hold meaning, their loss cannot diminish the love and connections they represented. The true treasures were the intangible gifts, Marcus's belief in my strength, the lessons learned through pain, the capacity to rebuild from fragments. I had once valued family loyalty above all else, accepting imbalance as the price of belonging. Now I recognized that genuine love requires mutual respect and boundaries, that sometimes walking away is necessary before genuine reconciliation becomes possible. The family we were rebuilding, imperfect but more authentic, had potential that our previous dynamics never could have sustained. As Gabriel and I reached the other side of the bridge, Florence spread before us in twilight beauty. I felt a sense of completion. Not an ending, but a milestone in an ongoing journey. Whatever came next, I would face it not as the accommodating daughter or grieving fiancée, but as the woman I had fought to become, capable of both standing firm and opening my heart, of honoring the past while embracing the future. So, what about you? Has family betrayal ever forced you to completely rebuild your life? Did you find the strength to set boundaries or walk away when necessary? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about finding strength through life's most challenging moments. Remember, sometimes the greatest act of self-love is believing you deserve better, even when those closest to you fail to see your worth. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and may you find the courage to create your own path forward, whatever challenges you face.